Hello and welcome back to the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here, emergency pod, ? It's a later night edition of the pod. I'm Zach Worden here, joined as always by Jori Negin-Shecter. Jori, Santiago Espinal is no longer a Toronto Blue Jay.
Yeah, it's been real. Santiago Espinal off. He goes. He is dealt to the Cincinnati Reds in exchange for Chirs McElvain, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, in a barn burner deal on the eve. Well, not really the eve. We've still got a week to go of spring training. So long, and thanks for all the memories, Santiago Espinal. That one catch you made, as Zach mentioned before we started recording, that one catch you made in the return to Toronto with your bare hand and your one All-Star game appearance are greatly appreciated, but unfortunately, you are not the 26th man.
I'll say this. The fact that we're recording an episode right now about this trade kind of speaks volumes about the respect that Santiago Espinal has kind of deserved from not just us, from Blue Jays fans, from obviously in the clubhouse, everybody kind of affiliated with the organization. I think he's earned a lot of respect, and there's a reason why he was on the roster as long as he was last season, despite not being a very good player.
Yes, he certainly faded. I don't think that much is a hot take. Not the player that he was in the first half of 2022, 2021. Again, that all-star appearance feels like ancient history. But, I mean, I think the most interesting part of this trade, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about it was McElvain? Was it? So we'll get to him. I don't know how much there is to dig in on him, but more so, I think just the more intriguing part of this is the fact that Espinal had an option, had options, and despite that, meets the chopping block. Despite that,
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's just comes down to probably them not wanting to put him in AAA, trying to find a major league home from him with the emergence of Davis Schneider, the emergence of Ernie Clement, the Isaiah Kiner-Falefa free agent signing, the Arjun Namala home run today. Everything's going into Santiago Espinal being traded. And of course, like you got to wait for a deal, right? And the Reds today learning something bad about Matt McLain, but they wouldn't say what, obviously prompted them to go ahead and make the deal. So I wonder if this is something that the two teams had discussed, and maybe the Blue Jays had kind of been holding out for a better prospect, and the Reds, given the news on Matt McLain, decided, well, we got to make this deal now, despite already having about 30 infielders themselves.
yeah, this is kind of a team trading a surplus to another team with the surplus. I don't really think this is a needle mover. Not that anyone would say that. And I would be pretty surprised if this is something that the Blue Jays come to regret, given that Espinal seems like his ceiling at this point. He's like 28, 29 anyways. Talking about ceilings, he is what he is. And that's a backup shortstop in a generous description. More likely a backup utility kind of infielder type that doesn't quite play any position quite well enough. And the problem is that he fills a similar role to a guy like a Cavan Biggio, but Cavan Biggio is a lefty, has a better eye, and maybe has a bit of a stronger arm. Or fills a similar role to Davis Schneider, who maybe isn't quite as strong defensively, doesn't really play shortstop, but hit the lights out in his brief call-up last year. And then, of course, IKF, who they just dropped a Brinks truck on, despite basically being Santiago Espinal, but a little better defensively. A little is maybe a little bit downplaying it. Guy has the Gold Glove under his belt. But again, it's just they had a million of these types. I didn't even mention Ernie Clement, who's another shortstop that is going to play around the infield, maybe sprinkle in the outfield if things went really haywire. Just Espinal just ran out of runway, and like respect to him and what he brought to the Blue Jays. That Stephen Pierce trade. Maybe, I mean, listen, for a guy that wasn't a particular needle mover with the Blue Jays and did eventually very much move the needle for the Boston Red Sox, it's okay.
I mean, like, what were you really gonna get for Steve Pierce, right? Like, you're not trading a World Series MVP when you trade him, right? Like he's not the type of player where you're like, oh, I'm trading insert X World Series. Like you're not trading Corey Seager for
Yeah.
Santiago Espinal, right? Like so getting like whatever Steve Pearce did in Boston, like that's fine. Like you can say that they won the trade because he won a World Series MVP there. But the Blue Jays, I would also say, got more than you could probably expect from that type of deal.
Well, even I remember at the time of the trade when that deal happens, I remember them getting Espinal, and the story on him was that he was riding this really high BABIP in Double A. Pawtuck, it's Triple A. They're Double A, I think is
Worcester.
Worcester. Thank you. I wasn't gonna try to pronounce that because I wasn't gonna get it right. But he was riding this 350 BABIP or something, and it was nothing sustainable. And he wasn't a guy, and he was a fringy shortstop, and they produced a major league player out of him. Sure,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take
A
it.
lot of credit for him too. Like he's as much as like this core has kind of, the Vlad, Bo, cabin group, like Santiago's kind of been there along the ride with them, like kind of been each step of the way. He's like one of those guys where he's been with John Schneider forever, been with Romano, like so it's really a nice homegrown player. Obviously, he's not like I was gonna say he's not like an all-star player, but he made an all-star game. And I mean, at this point, like it's the question really was like, what does he do better than Ernie Clement at this point? And I think if you're looking at that bench role where Clement has obviously performed very well this spring, and I wouldn't be surprised if they give him like ample opportunity to maybe do a bit of starting at third base, maybe a chance to start at third base, depending on obviously what happens with IKF. But at this point, I think you look at it, Clement is a better defender at shortstop. He plays more positions, as we saw today. He made a diving catch in left field in the spring game. He is a much faster runner. He's like the now that Matt Chapman and Whit Merrifield are gone, I think his sprint speed ranks second on the Blue Jays. So one thing that the Blue Jays didn't necessarily have last year was pinch running ability. And that's something that Clement brings now as well. So I think if you're looking at the bench role, Clement, better defender at short, probably I would say maybe about the same at third, like maybe a little bit more of a reliable glove, probably similar arm strength. He's a better runner, more versatile, and he puts the bat on the ball and has a more recent record of track success or a more recent track record of success at the major league level. So as far as that goes, I think it's a pretty easy decision to go with Clement. It's just it does suck to trade a player who you do feel like is so respected and likable in the locker room.
So I'm gonna bring up the V word, not that V word, vibes in the clubhouse. Get your mind out of the gutter. Uh, do you think that there's anything to be concerned about as far as another guy that Vladdy is presumably close with making his way out of Toronto?
I would say no. I think like Ben Nicholson Smith had the tweet where he was saying he was questioning more about because Bo and Santi are close, right? And he said I'm just gonna read his tweet here. Some people have asked a vibes question. Basically, will guys like Bo be upset that a friend of theirs was traded? Without guessing at specifics, I'll say this in general. Players change teams all the time, and players are typically pleased when their friends get better opportunities. So I also
What
think
a
I
reasonable oh, I was going to say what a reasonable, well thought out, and well articulated take that has no further nuance needed, and that's that.
Yeah. Um, I would also say like Ernie Clement seems like a pretty good vibes guy as well. Like he
Sure.
seems very likable. He's obviously a big Bills fan, so if you're into football like that, I mean, sure,
Then
but
you're really excited.
yeah, no, like he seems like a cool guy, obviously. And I do think that it's really cool his story as well, kind of coming and being like an college World Series champion and then kind of not really making it work at the major league level and then signing with the Blue Jays because they had basically a plan for him and optimizing his swing a little bit and really turning that into not just a major league opportunity, but like a major league opportunity with a winner where he can maybe contribute.
Yeah, which is really cool to have a guy that you know we can build him back better, and they've gone and done that and turned a negative asset into an asset is encouraging. Should we talk a little bit about what the Jays got back? Is there anything to even really talk about here? I don't know. I mean, pitched an A ball, pitched okay, went up to high A, didn't have as much success. You were pulling out the calculator a little bit, and you saw some stuff on Twitter.
Well,
I don't
I
know how
mean,
much.
we're blessed to live in the year 2024 where Baseball Savant has minor league Statcast data for us to look at, so we can search in Mr. Chirs McElvain and come away with some interesting information that we wouldn't have had before. As well, I mean, if we want to really like look at it, whereas like four seam slider changeup, four seam averaged 92.7 miles per hour, and of course all of this is in low A, not high A. So this is before he would have moved up and where he had so much of his success. Slider 81.4, changeup 87.6, and then he threw apparently two cutters, but that's probably likely a misread because you wouldn't just throw two. Other than that, like I mean, seems like he's pretty fastball slider esque. Like it said here, he's throwing his fastball 57 percent of the time, slider 29% of the time, changeup 12.8% of the time. So like three pitch mix, probably a guy that they bring in, and I don't know if you would have plans for them. I know Shai Davidi's article today said that they were interested in him in the 2022 draft when he went to the Reds in the eighth round. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's some depth, and he will look great in a Vancouver Canadians jersey.
Perhaps, maybe. Well, I was wondering too, because I think we talked about this a couple episodes ago. Uh, the pitching depth in the high minors, like at the very top of the minors, there's guys, but I think it was a bit of a mishmash of dudes. I don't think there really were guys that were penciled in necessarily, especially like at the double A level. Obviously, you got, Espino probably ends up in does end up in triple A to start, as does Tiedemann. But I think it was like we talked about the double A level. It's kind of just dudes. I wonder if he's a guy that they are maybe looking to like accelerate. Maybe they've plucked him out of the system and they're like, well, he looks like org depth and he's got some desirable attributes and he's already turned 23. I'm pretty sure, because I think he spent last year age 22, or he turns 23 this year. Anyways, around that double A ish age. So maybe he gets a call to New Hampshire.
Yeah, I if I had, I mean, like this is like obviously uninformed information, but if I had to guess, I'd probably start him in Vancouver and then move him up if he does well, just kind of based on like struggling at that level at high A last year. So give him a shot to go there first. I think like back of the napkin roster construction or whatever. Like if you look at like the AAA rotation, it's probably like Parsons, Espino, Tiedemann, Chad Dallas, and then like some of the old one, like a few of the older guys, whatever, however you want to go there. Double A is probably like Mako, Devereaux Harrison, CJ Van Eyck, like maybe yeah, like those three. So maybe he does fit in there, but I do
Yeah.
think that they probably have a couple guys who were kind of around there last year that would
Yeah.
fill in.
Man, I mean, everything we've heard about is Lavallee is still the coach in Vancouver. I mean, we
Yeah.
heard rave reviews from him from Churchill just a few weeks ago. So maybe he clicks there. They won the championship last year. Good vibes in the clubhouse. Maybe he
Run it
returns.
back, run it back.
Run it back. I don't know. I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see.
I mean, yeah, obviously, like not a ton to take away from Chirs McElvain. It's a Vandy guy, so that's always fun to kind of get some SEC talent into the system. But yeah, I think it's a deal where you clear off 2.5 million in Espinal's contract. You free up a roster spot so you can have a third catcher on the 40 man or Joey Votto. Or
What was that?
or
You got something stuck in your
yeah,
throat
yeah,
there?
yeah, yeah. Gonna start singing "O Canada," but yeah, like I think it's obviously like kind of you clear roster space. You get a prospect who maybe like probably profiles mostly his organization depth, but maybe can pop and maybe you can figure something out there.
Yeah, it's a dude, and Jays seem to target him. So I mean, maybe they see something, maybe they don't. I don't think it's necessarily worth getting all up in a twist about. But if nothing else, thank you for your service, Santiago Espinal.
You are the first departed Blue Jay to get your own episode this year, and they lost a couple. Matt Chapman, Jordan Hicks, Brandon Belt yet to be signed. Maybe we'll have to record a Brandon Belt episode when he does sign somewhere. Um, yeah. Other than that, I mean, like you got a favorite Santiago Espinal memory?
Mentioned off the top the and you actually brought it up and it jogged my memory was the catch he makes, that barehanded catch. We'll see if we can find some viz here or something. But yeah, he's that's like the only play of his I can really remember. I'll be totally honest.
I'll say I'll remember him for every time I was at the Dome and he was in the lineup. I swear he hit a double. Like
No, that's
he
yeah.
raked whenever I was in attendance. So
Yeah.
thank you, Santiago, for that. That is all I have to say.
What a gem. What a gem for that. He knew you were in the ballpark, so he showed out.
Yeah, if you're a listener, reach out. We'd love to have you
We'd love to have you on the pod.
Anyways, I believe that'll do it for us here today at the Bird's Eye View podcast. Thank you again for tuning in. Thank you to Santiago Espinal, and best of luck in Cincinnati again if you're listening. Make sure to drop a follow or a review wherever you get your pods. Like and subscribe on YouTube. You can follow the pod on Twitter at BEV_pod. You can follow me at Worden_Zach, and Jori is at Jori Negin-Shecter. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week.